Okay, so our first couple of examples here just have to do with using the cosine formula, but you'll kind of see how it really works. And this idea behind what we do in these two problems works for cosine, sine, and tangent. So first off, find the exact value of cosine of 75 degrees. Now, this is not a unit circle angle. It's not 30, 60, 45, 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. It's none of those. So what we want to do is we want to break up into unit circle angles. Think about it, like what can you add to get 75, or subtract if you wanted to do it that way, but addition is usually easier. So what can you add to get 75 that are two unit circle angles? Well, 60 and 15 would work if 15 was a unit circle angle, which it isn't, but 30 and 45 should work out great. 30 and 45 add up to 70. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to say cosine of 75 degrees is the same thing as the cosine. Now be careful how you write this. 30 plus 45 degrees. Don't write cosine of 30 plus cosine of 45. That would be incorrect. So cosine of 30 plus 45 in parentheses. So based off of my formula that I wrote down earlier, okay, this is going to go cosines first. So cosine of 30, cosine of 45, and then it's going to be the opposite sign of what I'm doing. So if I'm adding, it's going to be subtraction, and then the signs are next. So it'll be sine of 30, sine of 45. All right, now these are all unit circle angles. That's where I'm pulling them from. Unit circle, special right triangles, however you want to think about them. Cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2. Cosine of 45 is root 2 over 2. Sine of 30 is 1/2. Sine of 45 is root 2 over 2. So I'm just substituting in cosine of 30, cosine of 45, sine of 30, sine of 45 for their actual values. The final step to do this is just to multiply and subtract if possible, and simplify as much as you can. Now, when we multiply fractions, we multiply across, so top times top. And when we multiply with radicals, we multiply their insides. So this is going to look like the square root of 3 times 2, which is 6. So root 6 over 2 times 2, which is 4, minus 1 times root 2, which is just root 2, over 2 times 2, which is 4. And we'll write this as one fraction with one denominator. So root 6 minus root 2 over 4. Leave it. It's perfect. You can't simplify. You can't divide by 2. Nothing you can do to change this, all right? You can't, just leave it. Perfect the way it is, okay? So the next example is very similar, except that 15 is smaller than any angle that we have. 15 is smaller than the smallest unit circle angle we have, which is 30. So think about it backwards. And it doesn't matter kind of what combination you want to pick as long as they are unit circle angles. So I'm going to do 45 and 30 again. You could also do 60 and 45. 60 minus 45 gives you 15. That would also work. 45 minus 30 gives you 15. So 45 and 30, 45 minus 30 gives me 15. That's how I came up with that. I always find that the subtraction ones are maybe a little bit tougher to think about than the addition. But 15 degrees, how do you get 15? 45 minus 30, or 60 minus 45. Doesn't matter whenever one you use. We're going to do 45 minus 30 as an extra exercise. Try the 60 minus 45 and make sure you get the same thing, because you should. All right, so same idea as before. So cosine of 15. I'm going to rewrite this as cosine of 45 minus 30, okay? Not cosine of 45 minus cosine of 30. Do not write it like that. Cosine of 45 minus 30 inside those parentheses. Okay, so following the formula, cosines first. So it would be cosine of 45, cosine of 30. Then the cosine rule is that it's the opposite of the operation you're doing. So we're subtracting, so we're going to add, and then sines come second. So sine of 45, sine of 30. Perfect. All right, And then once again, we plug in our values that we know. I know that the cosine of 45 is root 2 over 2. I know the cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2. I know the sine of 45 is root 2 over 2 instead of root 3 over 2. So sine of 45 is root 2 over 2, and then the sine of 30 is 1/2. Okay, we multiply across, we multiply in the radicals. So this is going to look like root 6 over 4. And then this is going to look like root 2 times 1, so root 2 over 4. And we can write that as one fraction as root 6 plus root 2 over 4. Leave it. You cannot divide by 2. The only way you could divide by 2 is if there's a 2 in front of these radicals. You can only simplify like terms, okay? So just leave it the way it is. It is perfect. And if you want an extra exercise, do the 60 minus 45. You should get the same thing if you've done it correctly.